Hi, it's Rich from Loen.Design. Today I wanted to go over what we're doing here to our CNC router. I'm doing some upgrades and I think it'll be pretty cool. I was recently working on machining some Lexan, and as the CNC router was working on it, it was chittering and chattering, leaving very, very rough edges. And this is something I've noticed even when cutting wood, that the CNC would come along and it would stop, and the Z-axis here, which I've dismounted from the machine, the Z-axis would shake. And that's partially because the motor is way up here, the cutter is way down here, and it's supported somewhere in the center. So as it stops, it's got pressure on this, it stops, the motor keeps going, and you end up with kind of a big moment arm here. And there's one bearing block in the center. And this is a ginormous bearing block, and it has almost zero play, but there's just enough play when it's extended out to the end of the, from here down to here, and here up to here. There's just enough play. And so one of the very first things I wanted to do was put in two rails. This is the one that was there originally, and this is the second one I'm adding just now. And so it's just basically another piece of aluminum extrusion. I happen to have this piece at the back and a plate holding it on, and then we'll have two bearing blocks here. I'll make an adapter plate, and it'll go to the spindle. So here's the old adapter plate I was using, and that just mounted on there actually like that, and then the X-drive motor just attaches onto there, and then the Z assembly attached onto that. And I'm going to be building a second one now that extends down here. And the reason for that is there is very, very little play in here, but there can be some play as this thing wobbles. So having two of them will really stiffen the whole thing up. And so there'll be another one down, like this will just extend down across here. And I'm hoping that that will limit the shaking. The other thing I've done is stiffen the gantry. So this is the side of the CNC router. Here's the drive motor for the Y-axis, and there's a second one on the other side. So that pushes it along. Here's our rail system going here. And I used to have just one bearing block here going up to the gantry across. And again, to stiffen that, I've added a second bearing block here, and I've built a metal plate to go in between. I cut this on the plasma cutter. And so there's just an aluminum block here that adapts between the bearing block and a piece of 80 by 20 extrusion, or 80-20 extrusion, and goes up here and adapts onto this 80-20 piece here. This is about 2 feet high, and this piece I think was about 11 inches or so. So here is the new Z-axis. And as I talked about, there'll be a piece of metal here that connects these two bearing blocks and goes up here and connects to the drive for the X-axis. And then on that piece of metal, we'll be mounting that. And that is a spot up here for the motor. So this is a stepper motor, NEMA 34. And this is a component from Avid CNC or CNC router parts. And I have used their stuff very, very successfully for the motor control and the motors themselves, all the wiring and everything. And the limit switches have all been from Avid CNC, and they're fantastic stuff. And I'm very, very happy with this. This is a nice, solid system here. And I can't wait to get it installed. While I was upgrading this, I said, let's upgrade the spindle at the same time. The one I had was from eBay, and it's a 2 horsepower, but it is no way it's 2 horsepower. I've had it bogged down on relatively simple cuts. The one that I'm upgrading to is again from Avid, and it is I think 8.7 horsepower, and it can even be hooked up to 3-phase power. And the nice thing about that is we're right beside the electrical panel here, and I can wire up 3-phase power pretty quickly. So, oh, I'll show you the spindle. Here's the new spindle. Look at the size of that sucker. So that'll mount right on there and go up against that. And this is 7.5 kilowatts and has its maximum output at about 18,000 RPM, which is perfect, and has a ER32 collet adapter down here. So one thing I thought about, it doesn't have automatic tool change, but maybe we can look at that later. This is a fantastic thing, and I ordered this and its controller box, and they came from Avid, just fantastic quality things. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I wouldn't mind being, because I spend a lot of money there, but this is a beautiful machine, and the parts and the kits they give you are amazing. This is just the wire that brings power to the spindle from the inverter. Nice connectors on it, great big things. I mean, look at the size of that compared to my hand. And nice wire, that's at least 1 centimeter. Good heavy gauge wire. So I have to machine this one plate, mount this, get this going, and with this upgrade, with the ZAxis upgrade, with the 2 bearing blocks and stiffening the gantry, I'm very hopeful that we'll have a much more solid CNC router. All right, there we are. Finished machining that piece, which will fit right here. Well, that looks like it's working fine. The next part of our adventure in refitting the ZAxis and the new spindle on our CNC router is to tram this, which means make sure that it is perfectly vertical this way and this way. And I can see that it's a little off here and a little off here. By looking through there, I can see that it's off. I mean, I can just see a hair, so it's not bad. I'm just going to have to shim this out at the bottom a little bit. And I have a digital gauge here, which there, it's at 0. I don't know if you can see this very well, but I'll hold it on here and I get 90.3 degrees. So we're out by 0.3 degrees and 90.2 this way. So we'll have to just loosen up these bolts here and swing this out a little bit. What I'm going to use to tram this out is pieces of brass shim stock. And just search for that on Amazon. You get it in a package and it has all kinds of thicknesses. And this is 20 thou. And but you get it in a pack. They come from so thin they're like aluminum foil to even thicker than this, maybe up to 50 thou. So I'm going to loosen these bolts, put 1 or 2 of these or more if I need them under there. I think that's about dead on. All right, at this point we've got the Z-axis trammed this way. And now, how do we do it this way? Well, this plate and this plate that here, they work together, and there's a bolt in the upper left corner that's actually a shoulder bolt, and so when you put that in, the whole thing will hinge on that bolt. And then down on this side here, they've got a bolt where you can just turn with a wrench, 14mm wrench, and adjust the angle of the thing and then tighten down the bolts. So you put these bolts in all these 3 corners, leave these ones loose. These ones have an elongated slot here and here so that it can twist on that. Tighten this one in, adjust this angle, and then tighten them all together. And one tricky thing with that is that the one bolt that's in here is just a little bit longer than the rest. So you have to make sure you get the right bolt into that hole. The other thing I've done is I've lowered down the Z-axis so that everything kind of lines up with these holes. Now I had surfaced this whole table, so it's actually pretty flat. And that allows me to have a good surface to reference this off of. And now I'm just adjusting this, you can't really see it. I'm just adjusting this one bolt over here until it's exactly trammed in. That is 90.0. The last thing I want to do is put the dust collection on here. For this Pro motor, and my 8.7 horsepower one, this is 85mm right here. And so I had one on here that was just a little small for that. So I just went with a sander and just took away the edge in here until it meets exactly. Fits on there nice and snug. This is a dust collection shoe from a company called Kent. And that just fits on there with some magnets. And you can get different lengths of bristle in here. So that is a nice company. They do a good job of that. And they sell these things in any diameter, and will even do custom to whatever diameter you need. Now I am going to tie this right around here. This is plastic up here, so I want to tie it onto the metal part of that and just have that go around, and that'll just hold the hose vertically for this section here. And through the hose, on the outside, I have a copper wire, and that goes up through the inside of the hose to the vacuum. So on the outside and the inside, and that reduces any static. That gets our dust collection going. One last thing we have to do is cut a piece of this rail that will just fit in this little bit here at the end. This is an offcut from before, and you want to do it so the factory edge comes together. So I have an extra piece of this rail. All I have to do is cut off a little piece here, and we'll bolt that on. This is hardened rail, so it's not quite as easy to cut as you'd hope. But we'll give it a go. How hard could it be? All right, we're back with a piece of rail all cut to go in there. It was a little tricky to cut. Just popped the breaker a few times, patience, impatience, and whatnot. So let's get this piece out, put that one in. So I've developed a system for these rails. These have a hole for a 12mm bolt. So I have these little adapters, and I machine them so that there's a shoulder on here that goes exactly in a slot on a 80/20 rail, and that allows us to keep these things lined up. So here's our new rail, and I'm going to want to line things up so that the holes align just so. I can look in there and see how it's going to line up. Okay. I want these to be together. I want the bearing block to just flow over this easily. So one little trick I have for that is to tighten one of these on there. Perfectly smooth. It flows right over the joint. So that completes the upgrade of the ZAxis of the CNC router. We've added braces to the bridge so that the whole bridge won't wobble. We've added 2 bearing blocks here so that this thing won't wobble this way. It's really, really secure. It doesn't move at all. And we've upgraded the ZAxis here and the spindle, and everything is very, very solid. I'm very, very happy with this upgrade that we've completed, and it'll give us years and years of service now. There's just an aluminum block circuit breaker, 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 circuit breaker. Circuit breaker, circuit breaker, circuit breaker, circuit breaker, circuit breaker, circuit breaker, circuit breaker.